And we continue on with our weekly Fan and Press Luncheon. Now we're joined by the Dukes head men's basketball coach, and that is Matt Brady, as the Dukes split their last 2 games and 3 quarters, or however.
Just about.
Yeah, just about.
2.5 games.
2.5 games, the last since we were last here, as the Dukes lost to Northeastern in triple overtime, the 3rd triple overtime game in the history of the men's basketball program. 95-94 was the final. And then Saturday defeated the Delaware Blue Hens 75-50. First of all, Coach, congratulations on reaching the 20-win milestone. I called this the 2020 weekend for both basketball programs. What significance, Coach Brooks talked about the significance of it for his program, but for your program, it's the 4th time in 8 years the Dukes have come up with 20 wins.
Right, and I do think it is significant because, you think back to when I took over the program, 20 wins had been in the rearview mirror for some time. So I think what it does more than anything else is it shows there's a level of consistency, and it shows that this is a winning basketball program. And I think when you're trying to build something, invariably you're going to hit some potholes, and I think we know that I've hit some potholes. But I think now that we have this group with only one senior starter, that I think we can show recruits that this is a viable program to go to, play at a very high level of college basketball, have a great education, and be a part of something where you feel like you're going to have a successful career in terms of winning games. So, I think we've had good players. I think I've got an extraordinary coaching staff, and so we are grateful that we got to 20 wins. Felt like we should have probably got there Thursday night. In fact, if we'd played a little bit more even basketball, maybe even before that. So this was one of our goals. It's not the paramount goal, but it's certainly a significant achievement for this group.
Last week when we were here, you were tied for 3rd. After the triple overtime loss, you were down in 5th. And then after the win over Delaware, back in a tie for 3rd place. And interestingly enough, the 2 teams you're tied with are the teams that are still on your schedule. In your mind, where are the Dukes right now with this final week of the regular season?
Well, you just handicapped it pretty good there, Kurt. I think we're tied for 3rd, and it looks like we can. I don't know if we can finish in 7th. It seems like it's 2 through 6. It seems certainly viable, but I think our work is in front of us, and we control our own destiny in terms of trying to finish in 3rd place. Anything beyond that, we'll have to need some help, but. I think for us to going into this last week to have had a better chance to have won this regular season title, I don't think that anybody would have thought that 3 losses was viable given how strong the league is numerically. If you look at the RPIs and the KenPom ratings and 6, 7 teams in the top 120 in the country, I would have thought that it would have been 4 losses or maybe even 5 could have won the league title. A year ago it was 12-6, and I think that 13-5, we all thought as coaches that would be a record that could put you in 1st place. So, I think our group has achieved an awful lot. There's a lot on the table, obviously. There's a lot coming up this weekend, and then obviously everything that you want to achieve is that next weekend.
Can you break down the 2 games for us this week? Let's go to Thursday night. That was a pretty good college basketball game. Got into kind of a lull early, but then, of course, it picked up with intensity because you had the 3 overtimes.
Well, and I thought defensively our numbers stood up. And, I've talked to some people that thought that watching us play that we gave up some rinky-dink baskets, but what ends up happening in a game like that when we switched a lot, and in the next game we don't switch anything, but in that particular game defensively we switched an awful lot of screens, that you're going to get caught up in some mismatches. You're going to give up a few baskets. But statistically, our defense was really sound. We played against a really terrific player that had 36 points, but it took him 26 shots to do it. Quincy Ford turns around and had a very lackluster game with, I think, more opportunities against Hofstra yesterday. So he had a great game. I thought it was a great college basketball game. We had our chances to close the door on them. Ironically, we couldn't get a stop or the stop in overtime or regulation overtime or in the second overtime that I think would have closed the door on them. And any one of 3 stops between the end of regulation and the second overtime, I think we would have won the game. I think when they absolutely needed to make a shot to stay in the game, give them credit. They made a hard shot. There weren't a whole lot of easy shots, and their freshman center made a corner three in regulation to send it in overtime. So I think they could look back on it. Had they lost, Northeastern said, there would have been some plays they would have liked to have had back. We certainly felt that way. But I thought it was a great college basketball game. And, when you play a really good basketball team, if you make a couple mistakes, you can lose the game.
And against Delaware, a team which you led from wire to wire, they're two big guys, Marvin King Davis and Corey Holden. You had those guys under control for the most part, and if you take those two out, you got a pretty good chance of beating the Blue Hens.
Well, and that was our game plan, to take Corey Holden out and not let him get started. That's the second time this year we played Delaware. Both games, Corey Holden, who's going to be second or third team all-league, had 7 points against us. A lot of the credit goes to Ron Curry. But I also thought our forwards did a really good job of showing up when he tried to use or turn the corner on ball screens. And then Marvin King Davis, again, kind of almost a non-factor in both games. So our defense was really solid, and we did what we wanted to do defensively. If you would have told me that, Yohani was going to play 12 minutes and Tom was going to play 13 minutes, I'd have said that might have been a hard game to win. But our defense was really solid. In fact, I think our defense – almost game in and game out has been really solid. The game before against Northeastern, David Walker was a guy that we identified as a guy that we thought we could keep one guy on. Jackson Kent did an amazing job on him. Twice we've really held him in check. It just so happened in this particular game that Quincy Ford made some remarkably difficult shots to give them a chance to win. So all in all, I thought our defense was really solid.
All right, let's turn it over to other members of the media here at O'Neill's Grill for our weekly Fan and Press Luncheon with JMU men's basketball coach Matt Brady.
Coach, knowing that the postseason will be full of quick turnarounds and this tournament, the conference tournament itself could be days in a row, how impressed or pleased were you with how the Dukes were able to bounce back from that long game Thursday night into Saturday, and what does that mean for the team going into the postseason?
Well, I thought it was important, my demeanor with the team immediately after that loss, because it is a quick turnaround. We weren't going to get on the court the next day in preparation for Delaware. And there are opportunities for me where I will lose my temper in the locker room post-game, and that's happened once this year. But I thought it was really important that our guys felt like we gave everything we could, and we need to turn the page very quickly. I didn't want our guys leaving the building after Thursday's defeat without the right mindset. And so I thought that was important. I thought our guys had the right mindset, and I thought that it showed early in the game versus Delaware. And I thought, we didn't shoot the ball particularly well for the whole game. We were up 14 at half, and it very easily could have been 20. And I thought that was directly related to, how my staff dealt with our kids after the loss against Northeastern.
Besides obviously looking for the wins this weekend, what will you be looking for in terms of improvement from your team in this final weekend of the regular season?
Well, I think two very different games. Towson's as physical a team as there is in our league, so we're going to be, in a rock fight, right? That's the only way I can describe it. It's really hand-to-hand combat. It's like going to war. If you're not physical, you're not tough, you can't play in this game. So we're just looking for 5 or 6 or 7 guys that are ready to fight. I almost mean that, to the word. You have to be ready to be very physical. Because I think this game can be extraordinarily physical, and then I think you've got to be able to play with some poise. And I think when you turn around and play William & Mary Saturday afternoon, win or lose, you have to flip the script, and you've got to play a team where you got to chase people around, you've got to play really poised and smart, and you got to be able to play deep into possession. So, I thought we played really well at William & Mary for 20 minutes, and not obviously as well in the second 20 minutes. And they're playing a little bit more 3-2. So we'll play against primarily man-to-man on Thursday and maybe a lot of 3-2 on Saturday.
Coach, if you will address Paulie Shotkus' play the last few weeks. With Demetrius going down, he's had to play more minutes. But really going back to the Elon game on the road, he has been more physical, he's been more assertive. Just kind of talk about his play the last few weeks, if you will.
Well, he's such an interesting player because he's, in some respects, a very high IQ basketball player. But also when he has the ball, he can be a guy that throws the ball into the stands, which he did the other night. But we have a high degree of trust with Paulius. And what we really admire about him is he's happy with the role, whether he gets in the game or he doesn't play at all or he plays 30 minutes like he did the other night against Delaware. he's going to do everything he can to help our basketball team win the game. And he doesn't care if he takes a shot or against Elon, that he becomes our go-to guy in the low post, and he was very productive. He is the kind of guy that every team needs to have, and he's taken full advantage of the opportunity that James Madison has given to him, including the academic part of this. He loves it here. He's eternally grateful for the opportunity, and he's doing everything he can to be a tremendous member of our basketball team, and it's great to see him get the opportunity and then play really good basketball.
We saw Shakir early in the season be a very productive offensive player, but he's been kind of up and down over the last few weeks. But you and I had a conversation in our pregame show where you really talked about his defense. Address that, if you will, and just talk about how he's grown as a defensive player.
So, yeah, I mean, he's not a guy that felt when he got here that defense was an important part of the game. And I understand that he's been a gifted scorer his whole life, and so he's always had an opportunity to outscore his opponents. But to play at this level of college basketball was new to him. There's a lot he's had to learn. He's fought through some potholes and some adversity on the court and trying to learn what it takes to become a better basketball player. There are some times he gets a little bit frustrated, but I think he did a really good job the other night, kind of accepting the fact that this is what you have to do. And I thought he had one of his best games of the year. It wasn't statistically his best offensive game. He was 1 for 7 from 3. But the fact that he was so involved in so many different ways, in fact, a couple of times he drove the ball. Once he got blocked. Once he threw a pass that was very errant and shouldn't have been thrown. But he was trying to do what I've been asking him to do now for a couple of months, which is drive the ball into the lane. And he passed the ball. And he took good shots, except for 1-3 that I thought was a bad decision. And he defended. So I think he learned in that one game that he can have an impact in the game like we've been talking about, that we talked about the day before this game, in so many more ways than just putting the ball in the basket. So hopefully it's a bit of a revelation to him that there's a lot of parts of this game that he can impact more than just putting the ball up in the air.
So I think I have to give Kurt credit for this stat. Your fourth 21 season, Lou Capinelli and Lefty Drizel are the only guys to do that here at JMU. What's it like being a part of that company?
Well, to be honest with you, there's a lot of pride for our basketball program, for our players that have been here. This particular group is the first group I've had that the nucleus has returned from one year to the next. So this is the first back-to-back. It really should be back-to-back. I always think that it is back-to-back because we should have had 20 a year ago, truthfully. But we fought through some adversity last year and had a great finish to our year. But when I got here 8 years ago, if you'd said we had 4 or a chance to have 5, that would have been very significant. I think we have to do some things in March, to kind of put an exclamation point on this season. But this is a great league. For right now, going into before we get to March, to be at 20 wins is significant. To be in that company, I think, is a big deal. And I feel like this program feels like it's going to be this way for as long as we're together. So we only have one senior starter. We only have 2 seniors. I know that this group coming back next year, I think that they feel like they can do more next year.
You mentioned the struggles the program had before you came, and both Lefty and Lou are JMU Hall of Famers. Do you feel like what you've done here is appreciated enough?
Well, I'll tell you this. I know that those 2 guys you just mentioned appreciate. I had conversations initiated by those 2 guys last week. Lefty Drizel called me last week before we got to 20, and we talked for about 20 minutes. And initially, I wasn't sure why he was calling. I know the week before he was up at the University of Maryland, and so we talked about that for a few minutes and the people he ran into. But the fact that he called me, I took great pride in that because we have only talked one other time before that, and that's when I took the job. I saw him in person a couple of times. We didn't have the opportunity to talk. So for me to have a conversation with Lefty for 20 minutes on the phone, I thought was really neat for me. And then Lou Campanelli and I have talked a number of times, and we talked, it was actually 2 weeks ago. He follows our scores every game. And I think that he takes pride with the fact that JMU is in a place that he can be proud of. So I'm proud of the fact that people that have honored this program with their presence and their activity, that we've done enough that they've taken notice of it.
I think Lefty jinxed Maryland that day, if you remember who beat him, my Badgers.
Yeah, ironically, he must have jinxed us because we lost the next game. So, but it was neat. He had a great time. he brought his wife with him, and Chuck was there at the game, and he told me all the people that were there. I asked, we got into some stories. I think the people who know him best know that you can't talk to Lefty without having some stories. So I had a great conversation with him. It was really neat, and I didn't do a lot of talking. So it was fun for me to kind of revisit with Luke, because we actually talked about Georgia State, and then we talked about Maryland, and then we talked about some of the players he had coached and some of the players that he was with that night at Maryland.
Then one more off-topic thing for you. With Dimitri being out, do you feel like using the 4 guards has kind of been your way of making up for the lack of scoring with him out of the lineup?
It has, and it's something we've talked about for a while, and I do think it's helped us win 3 games. It helped us in the Northeastern game again. If we won the game, it would have been a significant part to it. It's something that we will now practice, every day. We haven't done it every day, but we will practice a 4-guard lineup. And when we need to use it, hopefully we'll be a little bit more comfortable with it. We've done it the other night out of desperation because of foul trouble. But I think that Shakir at 4 gives us some advantages. One of the things, that we took a year ago when we finished the season, I sat down with our staff and I said, there's 2 things we need to address. And one is three-point field goal percentage defense. We need to address it. We need to coach it. And we need to do a much better job of doing that. And then we need to rebound the ball better. In some ways, we've done everything we set out to do. We've lost some close games, but we've kind of changed as the year has gone on with 4-guard lineup and adding Shakir and Winston not playing as much, Joey playing a lot more now. But our three-point field goal percentage defense is significant, and our success is directly related to it. And then we're the 3rd best rebounding team in this league. And we have some holes as a group that we need to continuously adapt to and change and kind of hide. If we play this 4-guard lineup an extended period of time, we're taking away the one advantage that we have grown to appreciate, which is rebounding the ball. But if Shaq can rebound the ball at 4, which he hasn't done yet, then maybe we could play that lineup again, and maybe that answers some questions for us. But you don't know until you put it out there for an extended period of time. We've done that when we've played against zone. It's been great for us.
Coach, I know a lot's going to be made about Ron, deservedly so, on Saturday for senior day. But talk about Winston Grays, a guy who started last year and has been kind of in and out of the starting lineup, and his role and what he's meant to you as a coach and what he's been like for you to coach.
Well, again, another guy whose role has changed, and it's a really hard thing for a guy that came in and started half the year and then to have been displaced and then come off the bench. He handled his role tremendously last year. It's been a little bit more difficult for him this season, but I think by and large you wouldn't notice it from when you watch him. He's really eager and engaged when he comes into the game, and it's a conversation he and I have had, my assistants have had with him. I give him all the credit in the world because it's a really difficult thing for a player that's basically had success everywhere he's been to now go down the depth chart, so to speak, and then to handle it with the class and, I think, character that he's shown. And for that, I think that shows that he appreciates the program that he's in and the fact that we're a winning basketball program. I think it might be a little different for anybody if you're losing and you think you can do more. But clearly Winston thinks he can do more and play more and have a bigger impact on the team. But I admire how he's handled his role and don't know that we'd be where we are if we didn't have him.
Coach, both programs have had some injuries this year, and I'm referring to the women's as well as the men's basketball program. So this gives us a little bit of an opportunity because of Ron Curry's recent injury and his quick turnaround. Now, it may not have been a really serious injury, but certainly something that needed some attention. But if you would speak to the support that you get from the sports medicine staff at James Madison, Corey Morris in his first year as your athletic trainer, and just how much attention they give to your student athletes to make sure that they're available for you, because obviously throughout your 8 years, some of those potholes have been the injuries.
Yeah, now Corey and his staff, they've been phenomenal, and Tom Custer and his group. Dimitri's injury, 2 weeks ago, Ron being able to put him back on a plane and get him back to our staff. It's been huge for our basketball program, and Corey and his staff, I know Aaron for Kenny's staff, they're always available to us, and they've been remarkable. They're great people, number one, but the fact that they're always available to us and they're always asking if they can do more. I think our support staff here at JMU is phenomenal, and we're really blessed to have the people that we have the fact that they're so competent really, really makes it special for us.
Next up, you hit the road to face the Towson Tigers. 2 games remain on the regular season. The Tigers, a team which you beat at home the last time, so a chance to maybe sweep them. And then William and Mary here for the senior game. That's a 2:30 start time, by the way, folks, on Saturday afternoon. Kind of an unusual start time there. Just address the upcoming games.
Well, I think they're both going to be really close, and that's the way should be in this league this time of year. It has an impact on the standings. Our players are becoming more aware of it as we get down to the wire here, I think. They recognize how significant these games are. 2 really good teams, obviously well coached, very disparate styles. And, it's the quick turnaround for William & Mary is going to be something because it's completely different than how we're going to guard Towson. But I do think, the choices we make as a staff really is beneficial to our group. It keeps teams a little bit off balance, and hopefully it'll work for a couple more games.
All right, that's the Dukes at Towson. That's an 8 o'clock start on Thursday night as well. So the one thing is starting time's a little different this week for both ball games. We'll be here again next Monday to wrap up the regular season, and we'll know where the Dukes will be seated for the upcoming CA tournament that gets underway a week from Friday in Baltimore. Thank you for joining us here at O'Neill's Grill on University Boulevard. Have a good week.
Right, we can't finish at 7. 6. 6.